Japan is truly a country of contrasts, a country whose people are cute and small in size, but at the same time, they are descendants of samurai and sumo champions. They import almost all of their food, but they export seafood to the whole world. Their natural resources are very few, but at the same time, they are one of the richest countries in the world. Japan does not have an army, but despite this, they have self-defense forces that rival the most powerful militaries in the world. Japan is an archipelago of islands in the Pacific Ocean near the eastern coast of Asia. The number of islands that make up Japan is close to 14,125, but the majority of the population lives on 4 of them. These 4 islands constitute about 89% of the total area of Japan. Most of its lands are harsh areas and mountains, while valleys, plains, and areas suitable for habitation or agriculture do not exceed 20% of the total area of the land. Japan's area is estimated at about 378,000 square kilometers, which means that the country is considered relatively small. Japan is located in the Ring of Fire, which is considered one of the most dangerous areas on Earth. The Ring of Fire region is where 90% of the world's earthquakes occur. The difficult conditions and the nature of the Japanese location had a great impact in forming a stubborn people who were not afraid of dangers. However, Japan's location itself provided a kind of protection or isolation from intruders and invaders. Japan is protected by natural barriers that make any army, especially the old armies, think 1,000 times before setting sail to try to reach Japan. If any army thought of invading it, it would face people accustomed to facing dangers. Even if we assume that the invading army defeated them, this army would not get anything it deserves. As we said, the majority of Japan's land is mountains and has almost no natural resources. That's why all attempts to occupy Japan ended in failure. Even the Mongols, at the height of their power, failed to conquer Japan. Rather, it was Japan that occupied its neighbors, not the other way around. And successive Japanese generations continued to inherit the doctrine of fighting and being superior to all people. With the advancement of weapons and advanced fleets, Japan began to occupy its neighbors, such as the occupation of the Korean Peninsula in 1910. Not just Korea, Japan started invading any nearby country that has weak defense, such as the occupation of Manchuria in 1931. Because of this expansion and successive attacks, the League of Nations condemned the actions of the Japanese Empire, and Japan responded by withdrawing from the League of Nations. With the outbreak of World War II in 1939, Japan resumed its expansion campaigns, and this time it was the turn of Hong Kong and new parts of China, and also Burma, Thailand, the Philippines, and Indonesia, and their invasions even reached the borders of Australia. But at that time, they were concerned with defending these vast areas of occupied territory. The Japanese generals were thinking of calming down and reorganizing before they resumed expansion again. But what complicated matters and changed the plans was the French Vichy government. The Vichy government allowed Japanese forces to use their Asian colonies as military bases. This issue represented a major threat to the American colonies in the Philippines. This prompted America to issue a warning to the Japanese forces and stop shipping oil to Japan. The Japanese knew that their oil reserves would run out, so the solution was to seize oil sites in Southeast Asia. But the American and British forces were an obstacle to them. So Japan decided to attack the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, led by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, in order to cripple the U.S. fleet and buy time to seize Southeast Asia. Despite Japan's victory at Pearl Harbor, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto said, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the United States declared war on Japan and joined the Allies. In August 1945, the United States dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which led to the killing of many thousands of civilians, which forced the Japanese into a surrender that they had vowed never to accept. Then Japan drafted a new constitution for the country under the supervision of the United States, which prohibited Japan from forming an army for aggression. This was stated in Article 9, a clause in the Japanese Constitution that prohibits war as a means of settling international disputes, and agreements were signed between the United States and Japan. The agreement stipulated that Japan would allow the United States to continue to maintain military bases on Japanese territory even after the end of the occupation. The agreement also prohibited Japan from granting foreign powers any military bases or rights without the approval of the United States. They were convinced that science and technology were more important, so they focused on science and technology. Indeed, the Japanese proved their will once again. With the passage of time and the increase in the world's confidence in the new Japanese mentality, Japan established the Self-Defense Forces, which over time became ranked among the strongest armies in the world.